So let's take another look at Red Dead Redemption. Yeah, so a while ago I did have these reviews up, but as I stated in my previous video, I wasn't really happy with how I approached these games. So I want to take a chance to re-review them and kind of, do a different approach for these ones. So let's start with, of course, the first one, Red Dead Redemption, which was released in 2010. Obviously, today many might doubt, Rockstar. There was obviously no doubting that Rockstar couldn't make good games. Now, obviously, in some previous videos, I have expressed my opinion that I didn't think some of the previous games were all too well, and I'm definitely going to admit that I'm wrong about that. After replaying Red Dead, I kind of have some new thoughts about it. So, let's get into the story. So, this one takes place in 1911, 12 years after Red Dead 2. You're playing as John Marston as he's forced to hunt down his once so-called brothers, at least the surviving ones. Bill Williamson, Javier Escuela, and Dutch Van der Linde. That's essentially like most of the game. He gets shot, left for dead, meets Bonnie, starts working with various people, and eventually him and whoever he met raid Fort Mercer, find out that Bill fled down to Mexico. John starts working with the Mexican army and a group of rebels, gets betrayed by the army, starts working with the rebels more, gets his revenge on the army, and eventually finds Bill and Javier. Then he, of course, heads to Blackwater and starts working with the FBI to take down Dutch. Of course, that goes very successful, but Dutch kind of leaves a bit of an ominous message about once he's gone, they'll have to find a new monster because they'll have to justify their wages. Kind of, giving some neat foreshadowing for what would come later in the game. Obviously, the rest of the game is just John kind of being reunited with his family, spending time with his wife and son, and then he dies. Yeah, the first time I've played this, it made me think I did something wrong. So I had to replay the entire mission, only to realize that that's how the game ends. Which is definitely very gut-wrenching. Of course, there's an epilogue where you play as Jack, who avenges John by killing Agent Ross, who basically led the attack on the ranch. So, of course, we're fast forwarding back 12 years to Red Dead 2. If I recall correctly, this was actually one of the very first reviews I did, and this was actually one of my most popular videos. So, Red Dead 2 released in 2018 and is, I guess, technically the most recent Rockstar game, even though they've re-released quite a few games since then. So this game takes place in 1899. Basically, the West is dying, and after a failed robbery in Blackwater, the Van der Linde gang is on the run from the Pinkertons. There's 6 chapters in the game, and it pretty much slowly revolves around the gang crumbling within itself and kind of showing who they truly are. At least for some members like Dutch and Micah, maybe Bill. But you have some cool people like Charles and Sadie, and Wolfbait himself, and Jack, and a few other characters. So, basically, that's pretty much like most of the game. Is just the gang's crumbling, but there's also some really interesting moments in this one. The entirety of Chapter 2 and 3 are personally among some of my favorites in the game. I also do like a bit of Chapter 4. Chapter 5 is probably the worst part of the game, as it just kind of That's kind of when the game kind of somewhat gets tedious, but it definitely gets more interesting with Chapter 6, as the gang is pretty much close to falling apart. Micah's essentially Dutch's new second command, and then you have the ending, which is probably one of the saddest endings in any game. You also have an epilogue that focuses on John pretty much trying to put his past behind him, then eventually heading out from Micah with Charles and Sadie. Going back to the main story, there's also some really interesting moments in it, such as the gang trying to get involved between the feud between the Greys and Braithwaites. Then also most of Chapter 6, just where everyone's kind of singing about how Dutch is tearing out. And also quite a bit of Chapter 2 when the game was still somewhat functional. The gameplay for this one's also pretty good too, as well with the graphics and characters. So, what are my thoughts on both these games? Should you play them, and will they ever do a third Red Dead? Now, to answer probably the impossible, there's rumors about a third Red Dead. Personally, I would like to see a third entry in this series, but I think I would like to see it evolve on maybe a different cast, as I feel like everyone's story in this game has kind of already been told. As well with my thoughts on both games, I really enjoyed them. These might not be my favorites among Rockstar's games or any games, but at the same time, these are really impressive games. Red Dead 2 is certainly a very impressive time, and probably one of the best games that's come out in the last few years. Red Dead Redemption, on your hand, it's also great. It definitely does have quite a few flaws. It's not as impressive as GTA 4. Personally, I feel like that one kind of was a bit more fun to play, but Red Dead Redemption is still a really good time. Red Dead 2, it's definitely a fun game. I do like the characters in the story, probably a lot more than Red Dead 1. And it's a great prequel, and Arthur Morgan is probably one of the coolest protagonists in gaming. And Dutch is probably one of the best antagonists we've seen, along with Micah. New characters are also pretty cool too. Charles and Sadie definitely add a lot to the game, and there's quite a few memorable moments in Red Dead 2, just like Red Dead. But obviously that's all I have to say for this review. Obviously I will be covering the other GTA games as well with the other COD games. So until then, goodbye.